after 4, and I'd like to welcome everybody to Watershed Talks. And my name is Christine Curry, and I'm the outreach coordinator of the Izaak Walton League's Iowa division. And this evening we have Chris Henning with us from the Iowa division. She represents several other organizations as well. And she is going to help us this evening with our uh, Q&A after Adam is done presenting. And I wanted to see, I've somehow lost my little notes here, but let me bring up. Okay. This evening, we have the privilege and opportunity to have Dr. Adam Shriver, the Director of Wellness and Nutrition Policy at the Harkin Institute, join us. And this evening, Toxic Ties, What's in Our Water, the Public Health Impact of Iowa's Polluted Waterways. And this evening, we have an eye-opening presentation. And Adam is going to share, Dr. Shriver, that is going to share an outline of the steps the Institute is taking to educate the public about the connections between agriculture pollution, water quality, and public health. This includes an upcoming panel presentation on the 2025 Polk County Water Quality Report and a series of statewide cancer listening sessions held in conjunction with the Iowa Environmental Council. Uh, Adam has a really cool background. He's nationally recognized as an expert in environmental health and food systems. He leads policy efforts on wellness, water, and agriculture at the Harkin Institute. And all of our sessions are recorded. We have a few people that are here most every month. And so, you can find us on our website just a few days after we're finished with our sessions here. So without further ado, I'll let Adam take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Christine. It's really an honor to be able to speak to this group. And I just want to thank Christine personally for being such an incredible connector of people in the Des Moines area and beyond. And just she's always making things happen and bringing people together. So I really appreciate it. And thank you for this opportunity. So just to provide a little bit of a roadmap for my presentation today, I think I will spend a little bit of time just talking about what the Harkin Institute is. Then I'll say some about how we got to where we are now in my field in the Harkin Institute. And then I'll spend a little bit of time discussing some of the projects that we have going on that I think will be relevant to people in this group. So the Harkin Institute, the full name is actually the Tom and Ruth Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement. And it was founded when Senator Harkin knew he was going to retire from his long career in the Senate and Congress. And the idea behind the Harkin Institute was to continue on doing good policy work in the areas that were the main focus of Senator Harkin's career. So there were kind of a lot of things that he did, but he chose four main areas to focus on. So one is the disability policy, because he was the author of the American Disabilities Act, the co-author of that. One is retirement security. One is labor. And then my area is wellness and nutrition. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. In the area of wellness and nutrition, Senator Harkin has a number of really big lasting impacts. So I'll just name a few of them. One impact was he was the author of a pilot program that later expanded into a bigger program of providing fresh fruits and vegetables in elementary schools. So he was he was very forward thinking about preventative care. And then that also translated into the big role that he played in the passage of the Affordable Care Act, where Senator Harkin was really responsible for many of the provisions in the Affordable Care Act that focused on preventative health. So rather than treating health as just you get sick and then you get treated, thinking about how to keep people healthy in the first place rather than only thinking about health once someone gets sick. He also is the author of the Déchet Act, which is an act that governs how supplements are regulated. So huge impacts in many different areas of health and wellness. But what I want to focus on today is really the connection between agriculture, public health, and the environment, because that is an area that the Harkin Institute now is really getting into, and that we see a lot of opportunities to do good work with some wonderful partner organizations in Iowa and across the country. So I'll say a little bit about that in just a second. I did want to say a little bit about my own background just to provide some context about how we got into the issues that we're currently working on. So, as Christine mentioned, I traveled around quite a bit. So, I actually grew up in Ames, Iowa. So, shout out to a couple of people on the call. I think I lost the names, but I know there were a couple people, but I lost them on my Zoom scan now. But anyways, shout out to the Ames folks on the call. I grew up in Ames, but then for college and after college, I traveled around quite a bit before coming back to Iowa. And as Christine mentioned, one of the places that I traveled was Oxford, UK, and I had a postdoctoral fellowship at University of Oxford. And one of the groups that I worked with a lot there was the Oxford Martin School. And they had this program called The Future of Food. So the Oxford Martin School was this kind of funny institution within Oxford University that got to choose these like big topic areas and bring together a ton of researchers to focus on these different topic areas. And one of those topic areas was the future of food. And in particular, they talked quite a bit about the impact that food systems had on people's health and on the environment. And there were a number of people in that group that really focused on different ways in which food systems impact the environment. So that could be climate change, it could be um, distributions of there being too many nitrates in one area and not enough nitrates for agriculture in other areas, or same thing with phosphorus. But really looking at the ways in which agriculture was pushing up against the planetary limits of what the Earth could handle. And as I was there, I was, kind of more and more kept dawning on me that there are so many practices in my home state of Iowa that are, fitting with this critique of many modern agricultural practices from this group at the Oxford Martin School, and contributing to the fact that we're going to be pushing past our planetary boundaries. And so that was something that really motivated me and made me think about, well, how can we be doing things better in Iowa, because there's, of course, a lot of great history and positive history in Iowa. But also, it got me thinking about things that we could do to try to improve the situation. So when I came back from Oxford, I was really fortunate to get a position at the Harkin Institute for Public Policy. And I'll say a little bit more later about why I just think it's such a incredible opportunity and just such a wonderful blessing for me to be able to work at this place that provides an opportunity to do interesting work. And my role at the Harkin Institute initially was not really focused on environmental issues or the connection to agriculture, but rather it was part of a new group that was called the Iowa Food System Coalition, that was being kind of brought together with this idea of creating a plan for the state of Iowa for how we could have a food system that really worked for all Iowans. And so I started working in that, and then the director of wellness and nutrition left, and so I sort of moved up into that role, still kind of doing my current work. But then we had this really wonderful opportunity presented to us last fall, where Dr. Jim Merchant, who was the founding dean of the School of Public Health at the University of Iowa, was co-authoring a book with Robert Martin from Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future that was focused on industrial farm animal production, the environment, and public health. And so I have a copy of this book here. Um, and I'll show it to you. It's a really incredible book. But they wrote this book, and they wanted to have the Harkin Institute host a conference on this topic, and I happily agreed, of course, because I was really interested in that area. And that conference brought together a really incredible group of people, just a tremendous set of scientists talking about the health impacts of industrial farm animal production more generally. So a lot of scientists from Iowa, but also from abroad, and talking about things like water pollution, air pollution, avian influenza, climate change impacts. And we had about 150 in-person attendees and another couple hundred watching online. And it just generated quite a lot of excitement. And I'm going to just play a clip, if I can do this properly. Always a good question. I'm going to play a clip from Senator Harkin's opening remarks at that conference to kind of give you a flavor of what was said there, um, because I think it kind of shows it'll feed into a little bit about what we can do as an institute. So, all right, I'm going to see if this works. Can people see the shared screen? Okay, I see a thumbs up. So I'm going to just play a short little clip from Senator Harkin's opening remarks.
The Harkin Institute is proud to join in this endeavor to inform the public about the impacts on our health and well-being from confined animal feeding operations, otherwise, as we know, called. Let me state at the outset, we cannot continue doing animal agriculture as we now practice it and is accepted. Let me change that just a bit. If we want to have a healthier population, reduce the incidence of respiratory illnesses and cancer-causing agents, and if we wish to have a healthier environment with cleaner water, renewable resources, replenishable soil, wildlife habitat, and overall cleaner air to breathe.
5 words. You pronounce.
Of course. Sorry. YouTube always gotta get their revenue. Let me turn down your volume while I power through these commercials. Sorry about that.
Dementia is now known as type 3.
Okay.
Then we cannot continue doing animal agriculture as we now practice it and is widely accepted. I would add another component, and that is the degrading of our social infrastructure and the impact on our communities and schools of the vertical integration of all of these large confinement animal feeding operations throughout the state of Iowa and beyond. The decline of diversified crop and animal farming and what that's done to our small communities around the state.
Okay, so I wanted to just give a little flavor of that, because uh, Senator Harkin is retired, of course, but I think that's a sort of bold statement to make in the state of Iowa. You'd have a hard time finding other elected officials now who would make that statement. But of course, he's basing it on a lot of the things that were presented at that conference. But I wanted to just use that to highlight the fact that I think holding that conference really was kind of eye-opening in terms of one, just how many people were kind of wanting to have that level of transparency and honesty in the conversations about some of the ways in which our public health and environment are being impacted. And that provided a real opportunity to bring together lots of different groups, have this upfront and open conversation, and provide a venue for people to express things that shouldn't have to be controversial to just express a certain scientific finding, but as we know in the state of Iowa, it can be. And so I'll also just take a step back and mention a little bit about why I think the Harkin Institute really has a great opportunity to sort of cover topics like this. So I'm sure people on this call are kind of familiar with the history of Iowa, where it's often very difficult, even for academics, to just pursue science in a straightforward way. So we had the Leopold Center at Iowa State University, which is my alma mater, and Senator Harkin's alma mater, which did incredible work looking at different regenerative practices. But that ended up getting, shut down because of pressure from the legislature. I'm sure everyone on the call knows the history of Chris Jones and how he's been a very vocal critic and someone who talks a lot about water quality and how he basically, after a call from a state legislature, got, kind of pushed out of his job. And even the Harkin Institute itself, I don't know how many people know this story, but even the Harkin Institute itself has a history in this regard where it was originally going to be housed at Iowa State University. That's where Senator Harkin got his undergraduate degree. But the university, after pressure from the Board of Regents, put pressure, basically had a stipulation that if you publish anything from your institute that talks about agriculture, you have to give veto power to this committee within the university. And so that's why Senator Harkin moved it to Drake University, a private university where it could be free, at least from direct interference from state legislators. Now they still might try to come up with creative ways of putting pressure on, but at least they can't sort of directly wield influence in some of the ways that they have. So all of that is to say that the Harkin Institute, being at a private university, having Senator Harkin be a strong proponent of these ideas, having a president, Marty Martin, and a provost, Sue Madison, who are willing to stick up for their values, really provides us with a venue to present information that might be more scary to present in other areas of Iowa. And so I think that we're just in this really tremendous, valuable position where we can have these types of conversations. Anyways, all of that, that was kind of a long aside, but just to kind of bring it back to, we had this conference last September, and after we had this conference, we were approached by a group of local donors who were really interested in the topics from that conference and interested in looking at the fact that Iowa has had the number three, or sorry, was the number two state in cancer incidences for 3 years in a row, and wanted to get a little bit more serious about looking at the possible connection between that and different agricultural practices, whether it's high levels of nitrates in the water or pesticides and fertilizers, but making sure that we're looking at all possible influences on the cancer rates rather than only talking about tanning beds or drinking or smoking the way that some politicians prefer to do. And we were really fortunate that those same donors were talking to the Iowa Environmental Council at that same time. And so we decided to partner with the Iowa Environmental Council, and we created this project about understanding Iowa's high cancer rates. And that project, as Christine mentioned, has a couple different components of it. So one component is that the Harkin Institute is leading part of the process of just doing a scientific review of what is known about the connections between different agricultural practices and different environmental contaminants and cancer and how that might relate to Iowa. Now, of course, cancer is something that's really complicated. Any given case of cancer, you're not going to be able to sort of say, oh, I have perfect knowledge that this cancer was caused by this specific thing. But what we know are correlations between different exposures and cancer rates. And so our scientific report, which is being conducted by a really great research fellow, Elise Pohl, is focusing on outlining the different connections between different practices and cancer rates in Iowa. And it has three main sections at the moment. So one of them is on PFAS, which Professor Ruby is, also a great expert on thinking about a lot of these topics that Elise is working on. The other section is on pesticides and herbicides, and the last section is on nitrates. So it's sort of looking at those three things in particular and the connection to cancer in the state of Iowa. At the same time, we are conducting listening sessions around the state at different communities, 15 different communities across Iowa, where we're going out. We're not, we don't have our findings. We haven't finished our paper. We're not telling people this is the cause of cancer. We're just going out and collecting people's stories. And what we're finding from that is that a lot of people, I think, didn't have a venue to talk about their experiences and say, I did everything right. I never drank. I never smoked. I ran every day, but I was exposed to different pesticides and, everyone in my square block got cancer, So we're getting all of these stories from people who I think never really felt like they had an outlet to share their experiences, because they were worried that they would get accused of, being attacking the agricultural industry or, just sort of get frowns or dirty looks from their neighbors for telling these stories. And so the listening sessions have been incredibly eye-opening. Iowa Environmental Council is compiling a lot of the information from that. Of course, we totally leave it to all the participants how much they want to share. No one, is put on camera unless they want to be. No one has their name attached unless they volunteer to do so. But that information is then going to be combined with our scientific report for a much larger report in November that's going to be released, looking at this connection between cancer and environmental causes in the state of Iowa. The other thing I wanted to mention before I get to the presentation about the Polk County Water Report is that we did start a new podcast, which is really exciting for me, just because it's anyone on this call, you should start a podcast because it's really fun because you get to choose who you talk to and pick the topics that you find interesting and talk to really exciting, cool people. And so we started a new podcast called Canary in a Cornfield that is focused on the connection between agriculture and public health in Iowa. And that podcast has 2 episodes out now. The first one is with Senator Harkin. The second one is with a professor, Christopher Gruber, at the University of Stony Brook, talking about nitrates. And I'm going to just share again a little clip from that. Oops. All right. Warning, there's some chirping noises ahead.
Hello, this is Adam Shriver, Director of Wellness and Nutrition at the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement. I'm really excited to announce that we are starting a new podcast called Canary in a Cornfield that's going to be focused on the connection between agriculture and public health. Our first episode is going to feature the Senator himself, Tom Harkin, discussing the huge impacts that he's had on health and agriculture during his long Senate career, and also talking about his thoughts on the state of play today. Here are a few clips from Senator Harkin that will give you a flavor of what the conversation covered.
If you get sick or if you have an injury or an accident, there's probably no better place to be in the world than the United States. We can patch and fix and mend just about anything. If, however, you want to stay healthy, probably one of the worst places in the world is the United States of America. We are so bad in how we work to keep people healthy in the first place. I think from a public health standpoint, what kind of chemicals are we putting on in massive proportions on land all over America? People have been just pouring Roundup on for years and years, and well, they say it degrades, but there's now new evidence that maybe Roundup's not as safe as people thought it was. Well, where does all of that hog manure go? For humans, we treat it in disposal systems and waste systems. Not hog manure. Well, what if we had 4 times as many people in Iowa and we didn't have any sanitary sewers or sanitary disposal systems? Okay. And then what really got to me early on agriculture was the power of the big commodities, the corn lobby, the wheat lobby, the sugar, rice, and at that time tobacco, but just the power that they had to basically get what they wanted.
In future weeks, we're going to be discussing issues like nitrates, avian influenza, air pollution, and the impact that agricultural pollution can have on our drinking water and our waterways. We're going to have really wonderful conversations with experts from Iowa and from all around the country. I hope you tune in.
Okay, so yeah, sorry to tease you guys with clips of Senator Harkin and then going back to me because it's fun. I could listen to Senator Harkin forever. He's such a fun person to talk to and listen to. But yeah, so we have this new podcast. Actually, just finished recording an episode with Professor Claire Ruby, who was on the call, of talking about the next thing I wanted to bring up here, which is the presentation of the Central Iowa Source Water Research Assessment. And that event is going to be really exciting. So, for those of you who don't know, Polk County commissioned this big report to come out looking at the state of water in central Iowa, and decided, we want to bring together the best experts in the country and the world to think about this issue and put together this really impressive report. And Professor Ruby is one of the scientists on that report, where basically they came out with this report that provides a very, very comprehensive look at the state of waterways in Iowa. And I'll say more about that in a second. But what was interesting about it is that they spent a lot of money on this report, and then the report got finished, and then there was a little bit of sort of political dynamics where there were certain groups that didn't really want the report to even come out at all, and didn't want there to be a public presentation on the event, on the report. And so thanks in part to work from Christine and Mike Delaney and some other people who I'm sure you guys are familiar with. The Harkin Institute got put in touch with some of the people involved, and we decided to go to the Board of Supervisors meeting where they presented, where they sort of officially released the report into the record. And at that meeting, we offered to be the host of the first public presentation of the report to the Des Moines public. And Supervisor McCoy has been really gracious about it. He sort of agreed to it and has been supportive and helping to promote the Harkin Institute hosting this event. And it's so far the numbers that we're seeing for registration are kind of through the roof, at least by our standards. We are at least as of earlier, like way in the morning today, we were at 492 registrations already. So I'm sure it's past 500 by at this point. And it just looks like people in Polk County are really, really wanting to talk about this issue. And I can understand why some people wouldn't want the presentation to come out because it's something that people just care about so deeply and so passionately. And you can understand why. We're in a state where we have high cancer rates, might be connected to different things in our water. We just had a lawn watering ban in Polk County area, because the world's most expensive nitrate removal system cannot keep up with the amount of nitrates that are in our water. So it makes sense that people are really passionate about this issue and really want to have an opportunity to learn from the best scientists on this topic. And so just to say a little bit more about the report and what we're excited to have happen on August 4th. So the Harkin Institute is going to be hosting on August 4th this presentation of the scientists. Professor Ruby's going to be there as one of the excellent panelists that we have. And we're gonna have a presentation that basically covers the main themes of the report. And so some of those themes are drinking water, so the impacts on drinking water, the recreation and fishing, river flow issues, land use issues, and then yeah, so the effects on ecology and the environment more generally. So that report is going to be really, I don't know. I think it's going to be a huge event. So I would love to see people come out to that. I feel like if we have as big a crowd as it seems like we're going to have, that would send a very strong message to decision makers in Polk County and more broadly that Iowans care a lot about this issue and that it's not something that, we can sort of just keep giving the same talking points about and hope that it just kind of goes away. Um, so I think with that, I will probably pause and just see if there are any questions in the queue. I guess, the one thing I would say to try to sum up is that the Harkin Institute is really in this unique position because of the legacy of Senator Harkin, because we're at a private university, because we're at a great educational institution with awesome researchers like Professor Ruby and others. We're in this nice position where I think we have an opportunity to host events and convenings and do work that um, presents the information in a way that doesn't have to be frightened by political interests in the way that some other people in the state would have to be. And I'm a realist. I know that, not all good things don't last forever. So I think we're in this unique opportunity at the moment, and I think we're gonna do what we can while we're in this position to try to make sure that we generate conversations about this issue and work with the incredible environmental groups across the state of Iowa who have been doing a lot of this work already for a long time. And I think our work really just complements the work of all these incredible groups that are already doing things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the opportunity for the Harkin Institute to really get more involved in this question of how agriculture contributes to public health and the environment. And I appreciate having the opportunity to work with um, many of the people on this call.
Hey, Dr. Adam Shriver, you are a rising star in this whole movement, and we're just thrilled to have you on board and have the Harkin Institute and Drake University step up to the plate when so many others aren't, because it is, it is just so important for our public health, for both recreation and public health moving forward. And the Izaak Walton League was founded on clean water 100 years, over 100 years ago. We just had our 100th anniversary in 2022. And back in the day, there was a group of anglers that came together and said, it's time to call a halt to the destruction of our waterways. And they moved forward. And just a few years later, the Upper Mississippi River Wildlife and Fish Refuge was formed as a national refuge. And so we are continuing, to fight, but we have different things we're looking at now with heavy chemical use and everything else. So we're really grateful that you're doing what you're doing. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Heather Wilson, who's on our Zoom this evening. She represents the Izaak Walton League's Save Our Streams program and the Nitrate Watch. And because of all the awareness that we've been having over the past couple of years, and especially the past month or so, their request for the free Nitrate Watch program has been off the charts. They've had to rush in to get additional equipment and have extra help with staff and everything getting those test kits out. So it's really, really important that we share that with everybody. So I think Chris has, she's going over the questions in the chat box and oh, great, Adam, I'm glad you put that link in. I was just going to ask you to do that. So Chris, we'll let you kind of take over questions and make sure everybody gets their questions in. Thank you. Oh, she's muted. You're muted, Chris.
That works. I'm sorry. So we had an early question from Chris Maurer, one that we often hear from people who live in town and wonder if maybe anyway, I'll just read it. Question, when you get a second, about the nitrates in our water. Is the source really farm runoff? It seems like residential ground, fertilizing lawns, and when it rains, that water goes straight into the storm sewer, which goes right into the river. That is a direct line to the water we drink from upstream towns versus where a field has a long lateral movement of those nitrates to migrate to the river. I'll just add that my creek takes tile water and is just a mile from the river. So it's pretty darn close. Anyway, I'm going to turn that one to you, Adam. Do you want to answer that one?
Sure. I mean, I don't claim to be the expert on this. Unfortunately, Professor Ruby just left the call because this is something that she talks about quite a bit, where there certainly are human contributions to nitrates, their residential contributions to nitrates. Oh, Heather probably can answer this better than I can too. I think the great thing about this report that came out from Polk County is that they actually tried to quantify how much of the nitrates are most likely to have come from agriculture versus other sources. And I don't remember, don't quote me on this, but I thought there was something like, the report said that there were basically 80% of the nitrates, in Polk County were coming from agricultural sources. So it's definitely something worth thinking about. Another previous guest I had on my podcast, Dr. Christopher Gobler, he's in not upstate, he's on Long Island in New York, and they have nitrate problems also. And a lot of their nitrate problems happen to be from septic systems from people. So it's definitely something that there's a mix of potential causes in different areas. But I think in Iowa and Polk County, especially, the vast majority comes from agriculture.
So one of the stats that I remember, the question also comes about not just lawns, but golf courses. And it was a matter of the number of acres that are in towns versus the number of acres that are actually farmed and farmed conventionally. And that balance makes up the difference of the 80% versus the 20%. So Heather has put the nitrate watch, request a free nitrate test kit here, and you can monitor your water, your river, your lake, your stream, as well as your tap water. And there is a Clean Water Hub database. In Greene County, we started that kind of monitoring about 3 years ago, and we have multiple data points, locations, and what we were doing was to do a baseline because we have so many CAFOs and a brand new one near us. And it was actually the reason we were able to prove that we had had a spill. So I don't want you to think that just because you're testing the water, you're going to have a spill, but it certainly helped us find out what was happening.
Heather,
Let's,
did you want to weigh in at all on that nitrate question? I didn't know if you had anything to add as
To
the
me,
actual expert.
that's very generous. I definitely wouldn't call myself an expert, but I do talk about this stuff kind of a lot, and I think you gave a great answer. I noticed that Claire answered in the chat as well and added some extra context. So And just in case it wasn't already driven home, I think a lot of folks don't realize just how much tile drainage is underneath all of Iowa, just thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of pipes that are directing, changing the level of the water table so that folks can plant in places that might have been too wet. And it's just this highway for runoff and whatever that runoff might contain, including nitrates and fertilizers. So it might seem like, the center of field is really, really far away from the nearest waterway, but in fact, it's all so intimately connected. So what happens on the surface really does find its way into our water pretty quickly. And yes, I did throw the link in the chat for Nitrate Watch. I know a lot of people on this call have probably heard me talk about this before, but on the off chance that you haven't and you're interested in getting your hands on a free nitrate test strip, the kits actually include a bottle of 25 of them, so you can test 25 different data points wherever it is that you care about, whether that's your tap water or a stream or a lake that you care about, and then report your data on the Clean Water Hub so that everyone can learn more about the prevalence of this pollution problem. And it's a nationwide project, but we have tons of data points coming from Iowa. So you'd be in great company.
That's great. Thanks, Heather. It looks like Jill, I don't know if you saw Chris, but Jill just put her hand up. So Jill.
We have several more in the chat too.
Okay.
So go ahead with Jill.
You can wait though, Chris, if you want to take the others first.
All right. Well, we'll look at these. We've got them in order. Willis Madison is asking if the Cancer in Ag Areas Conference was recorded. Am I right in thinking that's an upcoming one? Yes, no. Adam?
Great question. I was thinking of sharing that link also. So the conference on industrial farm animal production, the environment, and public health, which did talk about quite a bit about cancer, that was recorded. So I will track down that link and post it in the chat. And then I'm sure we're going to have some kind of convening or some kind of conference at the conclusion of the first part of this understanding cancer rates in Iowa project, but that probably won't be until the spring or sometime next year. So I don't have a date set for that yet.
Okay. And so then how about a definition? I probably don't have the same definition as you do of industrialized agriculture and what dictates that term, whether it's size, practices, or what. Some of us use the word conventional agriculture for that same thing versus sustainable or regenerative. Do you want to take a chance on all of those terms, or you just want to do the one?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely an important question to sort of know where precisely to sort of make differentiate between different practices. I think for my purposes, I am using it just kind of as a shorthand for the overall set of practices that we identify as industrial, whether it's like keeping animals in intense confinement or heavy use of chemicals, or um, operations that rely on, a fair amount of expensive equipment or technology in order to keep them going. But I think there definitely are, these sort of difficult cases where something might seem like it looks like industrial agriculture according to one of those criteria and not look like industrial agriculture according to the other criteria. And I think that distinction is important to make in many places. For purposes of today, I think I'm really just talking about kind of the most extreme examples of the things that sort of fit all of those criteria all at the same time. So I appreciate the question, and I should probably have a more handy like exact definition that I use every time I talk about this. But in general, I would sort of just distinguish between chemically intensive practices that are not treating the land as a, sort of independent organism that needs to, or not organism, but an independent entity that needs to be protected in and of itself, but just sort of purely focused on extracting the most economic value from a given area or set of crops or set of animals without thinking of other externalities. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Jill, it's your turn.
Okay. So we were just on a farm tour in Wisconsin, and somebody had tie line, but they were, and I need to learn more about this thing so I can talk about it more intelligently. But it was a closed loop. So the water that came down through the tie line, it could then be pumped back up and used on the fields. So it was really intriguing. And then there was that other, these are both dairies. The other one had that 360 contraption, but it was a lot of the same kind of stuff, being able to reuse, the water or whatever. So I guess the other side of it, there are things out there. There are people trying to improve that. And for me, I've come to the point where I'm not so concerned about tie lines anymore. It's as long as you've got roots in the ground and you're not using chemicals. So I guess my concern is that the Farm Bill incentivizes using chemicals and that kind of thing. People get subsidized, bailed out because they farmed on marginal land, and now they're using things that are causing us to be sick, or the crops just aren't anything we want to eat. So that's kind of where I'm coming at it. It's like, how do we change the bigger system?
Yes.
I know I went to when I was first getting into this, and David Montgomery was at an event talking, and then a bunch of the regen farmers in Minnesota were also speaking. But then they had the bit by Department of Ag, and if they took funding to help with what they were kind of trying to do, whether it was a CSP or whatever, they were supposed to use chemicals. It was like part of the deal. I mean,
Yeah.
and if the farmer's trying to change and transition and they go to the banker, well, you got to use the traditional methods or we're not going to give you a loan. So I think there are these other things that are in play.
I'm really glad you said that, Jill. That was something I wanted to say in my presentation and totally forgot about it. But I mean, I do think that one thing again that kind of characterizes what we want to do as a policy institute is to make the point that these are ultimately policy questions. So Christine and I and Mary Ellen had sort of been talking a little bit about some recent, things in the news about people describing the ways in which farmers are doing really good things, related to agriculture. And I think that's right. Like there are a lot of farmers who are doing really wonderful things. I don't know if he's on the call, but I was talking to Tommy Hexter earlier today from Iowa Farmers Union, and he basically said he doesn't think there's a farmer in Iowa who, if they were paid as much money to leave land completely, for wildlife as they would be paid to plant it, that he thinks that every farmer would sort of be willing to set aside land that should be used for these protected, as wetlands and as protected land. And I think that's right. The people who are making the decisions that incentivize the heavy use of chemicals or incentivize over application of manure everywhere because we have so much hog poop that we don't know what to do with it. Those are not the farmers themselves, by and large. That's policymakers and lobbyists and other people who are arranging the system in a way to try to make the most profits for a very small number of big multinational organizations. And so I think I just want to kind of echo your point, Jill, that it's really the policy level at which the problem lies. It's not some individual farmer deciding, should I be good or bad today? It's the policies that incentivize different things are what really shape the quality of our water and the impact on public health.
And how do we change that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little difficult these days more than ever, but it seems to be both parties because it doesn't matter. They're all financial prisoners of our current system, and they're not able to talk about really what needs to be done. There's people that will admit it outside of their circles, or they'll admit it in a safe circle, but they're not willing to go out and advertise it because they're not going to get funded to represent anybody. So, Mary Ellen.
Yeah, Mary Ellen did a really nice chat here, and are you going to do that one, Mary Ellen? Are you going to read your
add
statement?
Yeah, I'm going to add to it.
Okay.
One of the elements that sometimes gets left out of this conversation it isn't just driven by policy and just driven by economics. It's also driven by infrastructure. So let's think about that for a second. We have this massive infrastructure on the ground. We've got farm to market roads that we pay for every mile in Iowa. Every square mile, you've got a road. Why? Because that's the farm to market road. We've got the co-ops that buy the grain. We've got the trucking industry that moves the grain. I've been watching a grain truck haul grain past my farm over this last weekend, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's also the processing. So think about all of this infrastructure that's put in place, and then we layered confinements into that infrastructure, right? And then we layered ethanol into that infrastructure. So when you talk about changing, it's a very intense system that has to be changed. So we can't just suddenly say we're going to grow cotton. No. Or some other total, we're going to grow hemp or something else. What happens to all of that infrastructure and all those businesses support it? So that's a piece that often doesn't get really brought into the formula, I guess you would say, of why this is so entrenched and why it is so hard to change.
Thanks, Mary Ellen.
That's a great point, Mary Ellen. And just to add on to that, with my work for the Iowa Food System Coalition, I kind of came across that issue also where I know, if farmers want to grow something other than corn and soybeans, maybe they can sell at a local farmer's market, but that you need an infrastructure for mid-size or larger operations. And there's just not the infrastructure in place for a lot of different types of things that you could grow other than corn and soybeans.
I have a neighbor who's actually growing wheat, and he has to haul it to Kansas City there himself. There is no infrastructure set up. There's no co-op that's going to buy it and then ship it out on rail, right? So that's another kind of rigidity in the system that keeps what we've got in place.
That's exactly what we found with edible beans when we grew Izaak beans, garbanzos, and black beans, is that they're not set up for anything but white beans. We managed, but it was not easy. It was not easy. There are a couple of comments about the tile water being held and then pumped back as crops need it. Rob Davis has put in a really good link about transforming drainage practices and drainage water recycling. One of the things that we see around here are the saturated buffers and slowing down the water. And Willis is talking about, let's see. The Ikes in Minnesota are recommending a prove it first posture be adopted by the Minnesota in amending the state's feedlot rules, meaning that permit applicants should be required to provide proof that the manure management plan they propose will actually not pollute ground or surface water, and that monitoring by the evidence that their plan is working. What do you think of this approach? I'm going to say about that, and let's ask Adam what he thinks.
I mean, it sounds great to me. I like the idea of having to provide that proof. It kind of one thing it reminds me of a little bit is I know there's this big dairy operation or dairy processing plant that's being built in Boone now, Daisy Dairy. And from what I heard, they put in this application for this big plant. And then when they first started talking about it, they said, oh, well, we need to get all of our dairy from this like 200-mile radius. And then the next time they mentioned it, they said 100-mile radius. And then the next time they mentioned it, they said we need to get all of our dairy from a 60-mile radius. And so it's sort of, they got permitted to build the plant first. And now, of course, they have this economic argument of, well, you put all this money into a processing plant, you better allow dairy CAFOs to go up in the area. Yeah, so I think that kind of thinking is really important to make sure that people figure out how everything's going to be disposed of before they get a run with it.
And the dairy is supposed to need something like 87,000 cattle.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a half an hour drive from Boone.
Okay.
So, what's that mean for the Raccoon River? What's that mean
Right.
for the Des Moines
Just so
River?
you know, the number is about 40,000.
Oh,
So
they
when you
have
hear 80,
changed that
the
number?
number's about, and that's a real number. That's 40,000, right? That's about the number when they eventually get up and going that they would need.
Well, they've changed it quite a bit since we first heard about it. Still, that's a lot of cattle when we don't have dairy cattle in this part of the state. So it ought to be interesting.
And the water needs too, right, Chris? I mean, it takes a lot of water for
It
dairy.
takes a lot of water for dairy, but what is really scary is what we have for nitrates already in the Raccoon
That's
and
right.
in the Des Moines River that go into Des Moines. So,
Right. I mean, just with the Save Bloody Run project with 11,000 head of cattle on the karst environment, and then you take that concentrated area just right in Boone, like you said, you're only 30 minutes away.
yeah, it ought to be interesting.
We we need more animals on the landscape, right? Well, we do need them on the landscape, just not in buildings.
Although we saw in Green Bay, we saw animals in buildings and in that closed loop that Jill was talking about, where they are changing the methane into natural gas and using it in the village nearby, piping it to the village nearby, and using every bit of it. Um, it, it was quite interesting. It really, it really surprised me.
In theory, we don't really know.
Well, it really surprised me the way it looked. It looked like it was working. So we'll see.
The jury's still out, I guess, right?
I just heard just 2 days ago this incredible presentation by Lisa Dorr. She's in Wisconsin about how these gas operations are financed. And it's really incredible how little money comes from the dairy part of it. And in fact, not even that much money necessarily comes from the natural gas. They just get these huge carbon credit payments from the federal government and from California. For some reason, there's some kind of loophole. And so the downside of that model is that it's basically incentivizing people to keep building more and more of these facilities. And even if you assume that it actually helps with the methane, it doesn't help with all of all of the environmental.
All the externalities. Where you look at the same kind of thing with the carbon pipeline, those taxes or those credits will be paid by taxes by all of us. So, but they're big credits and somebody will get them. So, just not the people who you would think.
No, a private company with a
A
few.
private, well, as far as the pipeline, a private company will get them.
Yeah.
I missed any questions in the chat?
Do we have any other questions? Because it's 8 o'clock and we want to honor Adam's long day and evening to, yay, Jessica's clapping her hands. Thank you, everybody. I
So
think
there is one last
we
comment
have one last question or comment.
in the chat from Willis. I want to make sure that we say it out loud, that capturing and burning the methane does nothing to reduce the nitrate problem or the carbon budget. So there's that. We'll have to do another thinking like a watershed talks on that kind of thing when we get more information, Christine.
Yeah, we will. We will. Well, thank you so much, Adam. It's been a privilege and pleasure having you with us this evening. And thanks to everybody else who took out a precious evening to spend with us. And we're super grateful to have you all with us. And
Can I ask one quick question?
yes, Leo.
Is what we're doing tonight being taped? And then, you know, a lot of times people put things in chat boxes.
Yes.
And then you're trying to read the chat box. I think all of us that register have an email. Can we get those links in our emails?
Yes.
You have some really good links.
Yes, I will do
excellent.
that. I will send that out to the people who registered. And also the recording is posted on our website. I usually get it edited fairly quickly. It looks like Willis has a question or has his hand up. Willis.
Yeah, Adam was going to post a link to the recording of that conference before the webinar disappears and the chat disappears. Can we get that?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Good catch.
Good catch, Willis. Thank you.
All right. It might take me a second. Sorry.
That's okay.
Welcome to the Spring 2025 Sussman Lecture, Students Are Human First, with Dr. Sarah Goldrick-Rab.
That's my thing. Sorry. I'm looking on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You can also save the chat, Christine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the first day. And
countryside, you see.
Second day.
That was really well done too. That was great.
Yeah, thanks. So, well, thank you so much for having me. What a cool group of people. And I really appreciate all the work that everyone on this call is doing. And I'm happy to be part of a movement of, thoughtful, cool, great people trying to make the world better, like all of you. And please do register for the event if you're anywhere near Polk County. And if we can get a big turnout, I think that'll send a really strong signal. So.
And it's online too. You have an online option too.
Oh yeah, online.
For those of you who can't travel, there is an online link too, so you can watch it virtually now, which is great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It was great.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Great to see everybody from Minnesota. We saw a few peeps just a few days ago at the Izaak National Conference, so it was really fun. We had a great time. Chris and I went together, and so anyway, and Heather was there.
And Colleen Worden is also from Minnesota. She's on my UMR board.
Oh, fantastic.
She was on. I sent this out to all of that board too.
Oh, that's great, Mary Ellen.
I'm looking forward to the recording. Adam, I had another meeting. I told Christine I wouldn't get on, but that meeting ended early. So I'm looking forward to the recording.
Thank you so much. We're super grateful to have all these retired people working 60, 80 hours a week.
Can't stop us.
I know. We're super grateful. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful evening, and we'll see you all soon.